Ayan na, mga kameta. Ayan na naman tayo. Bumabalik na naman tayo sa politika pang bardagulan. Ayan na naman tayo, mga kameta. Ito talaga, yung mga magagaling dyan sa mga constitutional issues, mga eksperto dyan sa constitutional issues, medyo pinagsabihan na doon sa mga basics, no? Yung mga basics ng interparliament or intra-parliamentary courtesy, no? Mukhang may konting bardagulan na nangyari sa Senado natin in light of course, the push by very good, very expert senator, very expert senator talaga to bring some of the pals from the other house, from the lower house, para magbigay ng supporting positions doon sa charter change. Kasi of course, mga kameta, alam natin yan. Ang charter change po ay sagot sa lahat ng problema sa mundo. Katulad ng sinabi ng iba dyan, forget about oil spill, guys. Baka pati climate change, baka pati new Cold War ng US-China, baka pati yung conflict ng Russia, baka lahat yan, guys. Baka maayos natin yan pag nag-charter change tayo. Mukhang ganyan po ang reasoning ngayon ng mga proponents ng charter change. Ito po ay sagot sa lahat. Sagot sa kahirapan, sagot sa problema ng mundo, lahat ng problema ng Pilipinas. Ang ugat po niyan ay dahil sa ating saligang batas. As if naman ang Pilipinas ay isang first world country nung panahon na iba yung mga saligang batas natin. I mean, let's just put this into context. No? I mean, if your argument is everything goes down to the structure of the Constitution, then you should be able to argue that when we had a different Constitution, based on facts, not fake news, not based on imagination or myths, that when we had an alternative constitution, things were automatically much better for us. This is 1987 Constitution is not our only and first constitution. Let's put that in context. And the Philippines has had problems with dynasties, with trapper politics, with massive corruption for a very, very long time. But anyway, pag-usapan natin yan unang-una, mga kameta, because ito na po, may mga bardagulan na nangyari. So, dito sa Senado natin, may mga back and forth between Senate President Zubiri and neophyte senator, of course kilala na sino yan, dahil dito sa issue ng charter change. Not because Senator Zubiri per se is against charter change, but because of mukhang, some neophyte senators, they are not taking into consideration some basic things, no? Yung idea na kunin mo yung mga barkada mo dun sa lower house, dalhin mo dito sa upper house, magsalita sila mga ganito. According to Zubiri and others, that's not really the right way forward. May mga basic courtesy na sinasabi. Kaya nga may separation into houses, kaya may special, bicameral na mga committees at mga mekanismo na meron dyan. Hindi pwedeng bara-bara na magdala ka dun sa kabila kasi i-argue nila yung gusto mo. But obviously, to be fair naman to Senator Robin Padilla as the head of the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, well, sa kanyang palagay, ito yung kanyang prerogative to bring whoever is necessary to shed light on the importance of discussing charter change and the importance of why having a new constitution or tweaking the current constitution could be very, very essential for dealing with some of the fundamental problems that the society is dealing with. But just to put things into context, mga kameta, kasi may mga world war na nangyari sa pagitan ng mga senators, even some congressmen who are in the same line as Senator Padilla about this issue. If I'm not mistaken, even the Speaker of the House kind of got involved in this world war. Pakita natin yan para mag-gets yung nangyari, no? Talagang Pilipinas, no? Talagang Pilipinas. Yeah. So may mga ito po yung sinasabi natin na lahat ng sinasabi natin na based on actual facts yan, na hindi ito yung mga marites lang, pero kakaiba po yung mga nangyari sa ating bansa. Not that I'm surprised, right? So of course ito yung naging context. So may konting world war na nangyari between Senate and House. And in one way or another, this is also related to Senator Padilla's push for, an all-out support for kanyang preference for charter change. Basahin lang natin yan. So, over the past week, medyo may back and forth between these two sides. So the leaders of both chambers of Congress have agreed to end their word war and meet behind closed doors. Although the latest news suggests even that didn't work, no? Ito ay ukol dun sa issue ng tackling charter change or CHACHA. So in a media briefing the other day, sabi ni Senate President Zubiri na he was able to speak with Speaker Martin Romualdez over the weekend after Cavite Representative Barzaga Jr. appealed to his fellow lawmakers to, quote, observe parliamentary courtesy in discussing issues surrounding efforts to revise the 1987 Constitution. No? So the Senate President had traded barbs earlier with Romualdez and other House members after he voiced suspicions that the delay in the full implementation of three laws intended to entice foreign investments was due to charter change. So ayon kay Zubiri, we hit the call of Barzaga for a ceasefire, calling instead for the leadership of both houses of Congress to hold the caucus where we can have a productive discussion in the matter rather than having everyone airing their grievances in public. No, the Senate leader said that he asked Senator Robin Hood Padilla, chair of the Chamber's Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes Committee, to call off yung kanyang imbitasyon sa mga members ng House of Representatives to attend his committee's hearing on Monday earlier this week as resource person. He said the face-off of representatives seeking to tinker with the Constitution and the senators opposing such efforts would have resulted in a heated exchange among the legislators. So, ayaw nila yung bardagulan sa pagitan ng lower house and upper house doon sa committee sa Senado. No? Medyo magulo pa yan. As a neophyte senator, sabi ni Zubiri, referring to Padilla, parang hindi apparently aware siya dun sa quote traditions and practices of the two chambers of Congress. This tradition, ayon kay Zubiri, is to protect him and his committee as well as we want to avoid a scenario in which conflicting opinions and heated arguments may take place, putting the chairperson in the bind, particularly on how to rule on such discussions. No, medyo magulo. Although latest report na nakita natin ay nako, mukhang tuloy-tuloy itong gulo na ito. So ito meron ng rejection pala. May rejection na pala. So this is the news that just came out. Okay, so yung closer discussion hindi rin mangyayari, no? Ang gulo talagang ibang klase ito. So tingnan natin yung mga latest dito. So yun nga. Hindi pwedeng bara-bara lang dalhin mo yung mga kaibigan mo dyan sa baba, dun sa taas. May proseso po yan, di ba? Yun yung sinasabi ni Zubiri. Kaya he called for at least a closer discussion to first, clean things out and then see how to move forward on this issue. So, ito po yung nangyari. Ito yung latest news. So, describing as discourteous yung Senate's disinvitation of House members, kagayan the other Representative Rufus Rodriguez, who heads yung similar committee sa lower house similar committee to Robin Padilla dun sa lower house. Sabi niya on Tuesday, he rejected the proposal of Senate President Miguel Zubiri for Congress to discuss the charter change. So medyo feeling nila hindi sila respetuhan na masyado. Ayon kay Rufus Rodriguez, I am against any executive session or secret meeting on this matter. Let us be transparent. We're discussing the fundamental laws of the land, not just a proposed piece of legislation. Let us not hide our discussion from the public. So ayon sa kanya, this is about transparency, not courtesy. No? Zubiri should trust his Congress colleagues to follow decorum. He should not mistake passion for showboating. Ayan. Hay, ang gulo. Ganyan talaga pag may mga super magaling na pumapasok dyan, diba? Ganyan talaga mangyari. Now, of course, things are quite interesting because one wonders how substantive and how fair, objective, and reasonable, and scholarly, and evidence-based the discussion will be in the upper house when you have a situation whereby parang kahit ano na lang i-argue na, kahit ano lang sasabihin na pag charter change maayos yan, yung ganitong style na argument, no? So the other day, I thought this was a meme or something like that, dinouble check natin na apparently in-argue na kahit yung issue ng oil spill pwede ma-avoid yan kung sana meron tayong proper constitution, etc. And I think that just shows you slightly the concerns that some people have, which is what we're having here is not really an objective evidence-based debate, but actually an open, almost ideological advocacy of particular position. No, earlier, of course, nakita natin some of the news where I don't know kung nadulas or ano nangyari dyan, whereby the suggestion was parang sinasabi ng ibang pro-charter change dyan sa Senado na malapit kay Tatay Digong na parang in-imply dyan na kung sana na charter change tayo, di sana ngayon doon pa si Tatay Digong. Yung mga ganitong bagay, no, pinost natin dyan, ipopost ko rin sa baba mamaya para makita niyo yung sinasabi natin. So, yun nga eh, like, no one should be against a proper evidence-based objective discussion, but things get a little bit crazy and messy and unpredictable and potentially very problematic when we see more ideology rather than actually, proper openness to public discussion, evidence-based discussion, no, scholarly discussion, even because we need to have really proper understanding of causation, correlation, and basic things, no, like di mamaya bati sabihin nila bati climate change pwede na ayusin ng yan chacha yan, di ba? I mean, we cannot read that ridiculous, no, I mean, so we have to be very, very careful about the kind of arguments we make here. Now, first of all, let me be absolutely clear. As far as public surveys are concerned, there is no clamor for a new constitution. In fact, if anything, the last time we had a very credible survey, or one of the more latest surveys that we had, sinasabi na almost 7 out of 10 Filipinos ay hindi sangayon dun sa charter change. Because there's a lot of skepticism about it. Yung iba dyan, alam na ganyan yung position. Yung iba dyan, hindi nila na-appreciate ano ba talagang issue dito. Because I think a lot of ating mga kababayan understood nila. The reason why we have a lot of problems is because we're not even implementing the good laws that we already have. And many would also argue that one big problem we have is we never try to do something about the dynastic politics and trapo politics that we have in the country. So whatever constitution you put there, if it's going to be overseen by the very people who are the source of the problem, then how are you going to solve the problem? Basic logic lang yan. Not to mention, baka nga it can even get worse because any new constitution could even further exacerbate existing problems, including, of course, the domination of the entire political system by few political dynasties. I mean, the Philippines is entirely in a league of its own, way worse than Mexico, Argentina, even worse than Thailand, which has a very kind of a taxing, family-oriented politics and all. So for sa marami sa ating mga kababayan, they remain skeptical, they remain a little bit unsure about what this is all about. So the public clamor is not there. The public clamor is for less trapo politics, more progressive politics, is for more effective governance, for stronger state institution, for better welfare. And the argument that changing the constitution per se will make things automatically better, like, and all people, I'm not sure there's that reflects public opinion in every sense of the word. In fact, no less than President Marcos Jr. himself has expressed skepticism about charter change in the past, no? Even if he ran under a parang federalism party, no? Kaya nga sabi nga ni President Marcos Jr., no? Earlier, I'm not even gonna go into the fiscal issues because if you're familiar with fiscal issues, you'll know that many, like for instance, if you have a you have a federalist setup, that means kanya-kanyang diskarte yan. Eh marami sa ating mga LGUs cannot raise enough funds on themselves, and the tendencies under federal system, you exacerbate existing problems, fiscal problems, not to mention you give essentially warlords and super trapos in certain parts of the country almost complete control of that area. Kasi federal na yan, wala nang pakialaman, di ba? Kanya-kanyang diskarte na yan, di ba? So in fact, President Marcos Jr. himself, right, has made it clear na hindi priority sa kanya yung charter change because the president himself recognizes that, medyo may stigma dun sa charter change in light of what his own father did back in the day, and also how this could muddy the waters. And speaking of the muddying the waters, I'll discuss this more because one of the big concerns of Zubiri is this: if talagang gusto natin to make our laws more, amenable to foreign investors and all, you can just pass new laws and amend existing constitution. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? When you can tweak the wheel, that's what Zubiri is saying, right? Now, this is what President Marcos said. He said we can achieve what we want, but within the present constitutional framework, the way the Constitution is written. So, ito yung sinabi ni Pangulong Marcos himself, no, in a video posted on social media by the Star newspaper. So, ito po mismo ang sinabi ng ating Pangulo, no? This is from the President himself. So, the President himself admits that it's a matter of making the most of what you have than trying to reinvent the wheel and creating new problems, unforeseen problems, and yung tinatawag na unintended consequences. This is the President of the Republic himself, running on a federalist platform, whose father himself engaged in constitutional change in the past, saying that we don't need a new constitution, and remains very, very skeptical about this. So, one wonders what's going on here. But what's even more troubling, mga kameta, is that Senator Zubiri is arguing that because of itong push, itong mga yung ba dyan, na pinipilit yung charter change issue, nagugulan ng usapan dahil parang nadidelay ayon sa kanya yung efforts to to pass new laws. So ito yung mga kameta, no? So if the argument is we need new laws to make our country more competitive, then sinasabi ni Zubiri, di doon na tayo, focus tayo dun sa mga kailangan natin ipasa ng bagong batas para mas maayos yung ating ano, 'di ba? Legal framework, no? Not to mention, of course, many people would say, what we need is to bring down the cost of electricity, water, basic utilities. We have to make sure that corruption is is not as inefficient and as garapalan as it is. You don't necessarily need a new constitution for that, right? You just need to implement the existing constitution, make tweaks here and there, make certain amendments perhaps at most. Yun yung argument nila Zubiri and perhaps and a lot of people, including the President of the Republic, right? Who got 31 million votes, at least officially speaking, no? So yun po yung pinag-usapan natin. Kasi kung argument na kabila, number one siya sa Senate race, ganun. Well, Presidente naman si Marcos. So, you get what I'm saying? Let's go to this because Zubiri nga is arguing, mamaya na tayo saan na yan? Ito. Basahin natin yan. So, Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri expressed his suspicion Wednesday that yung delay nga on the approval of the implementing rules and regulation, yung tinatawag na IRR. Kasi, mga kameta, just to give you a background, no, hindi yung pag pumapasa ka ng bagong batas, dapat may implementing rules and regulation din yan. Hindi yung meron kang motherhood statement dyan, tapos bahala na. Diba? Hindi pwedeng gano'n. Dapat may framework for implementation of that law. That's very, very important. No? So ayon kay Zubiri, the National Economic Development Authority and other appropriate state agencies have yet to finalize yung IRR for 3 laws more than a year since they were passed during the 18th Congress. So ito yung Public Services Act Republic number 11659, Retail Trade Liberalization Act Republic Act 11595, and Foreign Investment Act Republic Act 11647. Ipopost ko yan dito mga kameta para makita niya at ma-appreciate yung pinag-usapan natin dito. Alright? Just a second. So, ito po ay napasa the other year pa. But it's one thing to pass a law. It's in order to make sure those laws are implementable, no? And feasible. So, ito po yung tatlong batas, no? So, yung argument na kailangan natin ng Chacha dahil hindi magandang ating saligang batas, well, that's problematic because we have not even implemented some of the laws that we have passed, including very recent laws. Very, very recent laws. These 3 laws, Public Services Act, Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and Foreign Investment Act. You need the IRR for that. And then we can argue whether sapat ba or hindi. You cannot say hindi sapat yung ating constitution natin per se or may problema ang constitution natin. Hindi mo pa lang na-implement yung mga newly passed laws, di ba? Including mga to which were expressly passed in order to make the Philippines more competitive. Now, we can debate whether these laws themselves are best for the country, but ibang usapan yan. But what I'm saying, logically speaking, baka naman, di ba? First, you want to go to the laws that we have already been passing or just recently passed. Let's implement them. Let's make sure they're properly implemented. And then we can talk about whether sapat pa yung status quo or not. Di ba? So that's why the concern here is it looks like certain camps are ideological about this, not really open to proper debate. They just want to push a certain agenda. They're not really open to proper debate. That's the concern that is being raised here. And that's muddying the water. That's also creating unnecessary tensions between the lower house and upper house. And the President himself, President Marcos himself said, hindi kailangan ng bagong batas, bagong constitution. Let's make the most of what we already have. Alright? In fairness naman kay President Marcos on this point, I think a lot of people can agree with him, including those from the opposition or people who didn't vote for him. Alright? Okay mga kameta, I'll keep it here because I have to go another interview and then another, ang dami ko pang gagawin. But I said, kailangan talaga natin ilabas yan bago mamaya kung saan naman patpad yung usapan natin. Alright? Okay, maraming salamat mga kameta. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga bigay ng support sa atin. I really, really appreciate it.